Keanu Reeves, one of Hollywood's most admired actors, walked quietly into a luxury car dealership. To him, it was just another day, but what was about to unfold would leave an unforgettable impression. Before we dive into the full story, let us know where you're watching from, and if you enjoy stories like this, be sure to subscribe. Tomorrow we'll share another special tale just for you. It was a typical Los Angeles morning, the sky a clear blue, an open invitation for something extraordinary to happen. Keanu, dressed in a black leather jacket and worn jeans, strolled along the streets with his usual understated charm. He moved calmly, his demeanor modest despite the occasional admiring glances from fans who recognized him. True to his nature, he greeted each acknowledgement with a small smile, a wave, or a kind thank you, never allowing fame to overshadow his humanity. On his way, Keanu stopped by a cafe he had visited for years. The familiarity of the place felt like home. "Good morning, Oliver. How's it going?" he asked the barista warmly. "Good morning, Keanu. The usual." "The usual, please." As he waited for his coffee, his mind wandered. For months, he had been quietly searching for something, a meaningful project that blended his love of cars with his desire to make a difference. He wasn't just looking for a vehicle, he wanted a classic he could restore, something with soul and purpose. Perhaps it would be a donation for a good cause, or even a tribute to something close to his heart. Coffee in hand, he continued on his journey toward a dealership known for its luxurious, rare cars. When he stepped through the glass doors, he was greeted by an atmosphere dripping with wealth. The floors gleamed under the lights, reflecting the flawless surfaces of the cars. Plush carpets muffled the sound of footsteps, and the air carried the unmistakable scent of polished leather. Well-dressed employees moved about, catering to clients clad in tailored suits and expensive accessories. In contrast, Keanu's understated appearance rendered him almost invisible. Almost. A few curious glances landed on him, followed by hushed whispers. He ignored the murmurs, his focus locked on a rare car displayed in the back. Its timeless design and immaculate details immediately drew him in. Determined, Keanu approached a salesman absorbed in his phone. "Excuse me, could you tell me more about this model?" he asked politely. The salesman barely glanced up. "Hang on, I'll get someone," he replied dismissively before walking away. Keanu's expression remained neutral, though a slight furrow of his brow betrayed his growing discomfort. He turned back to the car, taking in every curve, every detail. Meanwhile, the employees whispered among themselves. "Does he even know where he is?" one muttered. "He's not buying anything here," another replied. Keanu heard them but chose to remain silent. He rubbed his chin thoughtfully, masking the unease that had begun to creep in. Then from across the room a manager appeared, walking toward him with measured steps. The man's posture was stiff, his gaze sharp. When he stopped in front of Keanu, his smile seemed more condescending than welcoming. "This model is very exclusive," the manager said, his tone almost testing. "That's exactly what I'm looking for," Keanu replied evenly, meeting the man's gaze. The manager scanned Keanu from head to toe, his doubt evident. "Well, I hope you're prepared," he said. "This car isn't for just anyone." Keanu held his gaze unfazed. A faint smile crossed his lips, but his eyes conveyed an unyielding calm. What the manager didn't know was that the man standing before him wasn't just anyone. Keanu Reeves wasn't only a celebrated actor. He was revered for his humility, kindness, and integrity. The truth about him would soon come to light, and when it did, the impact would be unforgettable. Keanu returned his attention to the car, running his fingers along its smooth surface. But the tension in the room grew heavier. The looks and whispers around him became harder to ignore. Moments later, another man entered the scene. Richard, the senior manager. His every step seemed designed to assert dominance. "Interested in this model?" Richard asked, his tone laced with mockery. "Yes, it's remarkable." "I'd like to know more," Keanu replied, calm but direct. Richard's eyes swept over Keanu's worn jeans and leather jacket. His raised eyebrow betrayed his skepticism. "This is one of our most exclusive models," Richard said with a smirk. "Very few people even get to see one, let alone own it." Keanu stayed composed, though the air between them felt charged. Richard took a deliberate step closer, as if to block Keanu's view of the car. "You do realize this car costs more than a house in Beverly Hills, right? It's not something just anyone can afford." Keanu's brow furrowed slightly. but he maintained his polite tone. I'm aware. That's why I'm here. Could you tell me more about it? Richard chuckled dryly. Look, cars like this aren't just vehicles. They're symbols of success, exclusivity, status. No offense, but you don't exactly seem to fit the profile? Keanu's eyes narrowed ever so slightly. Profile? He echoed. Yes, Richard replied smugly. Our cars attract a certain clientele, people who understand what they're buying. And with all due respect, you don't seem to align with that. Keanu stood tall, his calm demeanor now carrying an undercurrent of quiet determination. Interesting how you can judge someone by their clothes, he said evenly. That says a lot about you, not me. Richard bristled at the response. Taking a step closer, he lowered his voice, his tone dripping with condescension. Listen, buddy, people like you walk in here all the time. They look, they dream, and then they leave. If you're here to play pretend, don't waste my time, or my team's. Keanu's stance shifted, his patience replaced with resolve. His calm voice cut through the tension. And what if I'm not here to dream? He asked simply. Richard laughed, shaking his head. But little did he know, this encounter was about to take a turn no one in that dealership would forget. Keanu Reeves, one of Hollywood's most respected and beloved figures, quietly entered a high-end car dealership. His purpose was simple, to explore and perhaps find a meaningful vehicle that resonated with his vision. But what transpired within those walls was far from ordinary, and it would become a lesson in humility and the true meaning of respect. As Keanu stepped inside, his worn leather jacket and simple jeans contrasted sharply with the gleaming luxury of the showroom. The floor reflected the polished exteriors of exclusive cars, each one priced at a level meant to signify status. The employees moved with practiced precision, catering to clients who exuded wealth and power. Keanu, with his quiet demeanor, didn't fit their typical mold, and it didn't take long for that to become painfully clear. Walking past the opulence, Keanu's eyes landed on a classic car tucked away toward the back of the showroom. Its timeless design caught his attention, and he approached it with genuine interest. However, his simple inquiry to a nearby salesman, a polite request for more information about the car, was met with dismissal. The salesman, barely looking up from his phone, mumbled, "I'll get someone else to help you." Keanu's neutral expression betrayed no emotion, but the slight furrow of his brow hinted at his growing discomfort. Around him, murmurs began to ripple among the staff and a few customers. "What's he doing here?" one employee whispered. "He doesn't look like he can afford anything in this place," another remarked, loud enough for Keanu to hear. Still, he remained composed, studying the car in front of him, as if the negativity around him didn't exist. Then a manager named Richard entered the scene. With his stiff posture and sharp gaze, he exuded authority, or at least, he thought he did. Richard approached Keanu with a condescending smile. "This model is extremely exclusive," he said, his tone dripping with skepticism. "That's exactly why I'm interested," Keanu replied calmly. Richard scanned Keanu's attire, his raised eyebrow a clear indicator of judgment. "Well," Richard began, his voice filled with mockery, "this isn't just any car. It's not something you'd find on a casual stroll. It's for people who can afford it and who have something to prove. Honestly, you don't seem like you have either." The air grew heavier, oppressive. Employees and customers nearby shifted uncomfortably, but couldn't look away. Keanu's calm demeanor didn't falter, but his faint smile now carried a hint of restrained indignation. "Funny," Keanu said softly, his tone cutting through the tension. "I always thought the real luxury was treating people with respect. Maybe you should think about that." Richard's face darkened, his pride wounded. He stepped closer, his voice now dripping with sarcasm and disdain. "People like you only come here to waste everyone's time. This isn't a park, and it's definitely not a place for dreamers in worn jackets with empty pockets." Keanu tilted his head slightly, studying Richard's face with a calm yet penetrating gaze. After a pause, he responded with measured words. "Funny you talk about wasting time when you're so busy judging others by their appearance instead of who they are. Maybe you should think about what really matters." Richard, now visibly irritated, stepped even closer, invading Keanu's personal space. "Oh, I know what matters," he snapped. And it's not moral lessons from someone who walks in here acting like they belong. You don't know who you're dealing with. Keanu didn't flinch. His calm gaze only seemed to fuel Richard's frustration. Completely losing control, Richard raised his fist in a rash attempt to intimidate or perhaps even strike Keanu. But with the composure of someone accustomed to tense situations, Keanu swiftly intercepted the motion. He caught Richard's fist midair, his grip firm yet not aggressive, a gesture of restraint rather than retaliation. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. The entire showroom fell silent, all eyes fixed on the unfolding scene. Richard stood stunned, unable to comprehend how easily his blow had been stopped. Keanu's steady voice broke the silence. "The anger you're feeling has nothing to do with me," he said, his words deliberate and calm. "Maybe it's time to look inward and deal with that before you take it out on others." Keanu released Richard's fist with the same calm demeanor. The manager stepped back, shaken, but tried to mask his insecurity with a rigid posture. Keanu adjusted his jacket and cast one last look at Richard. "Respect doesn't cost a thing," he said, "but for some people, it seems harder to find than any car in this place." Without waiting for a response, Keanu turned and walked toward the exit. The only sound was the echo of his footsteps on the pristine floor. Just as he reached the door, he noticed a young man holding up a phone, his hands trembling slightly. The man had been recording the entire interaction. Keanu paused briefly, meeting the man's gaze. The young man gave him a small, nervous nod. Keanu offered a faint, almost imperceptible smile before stepping into the Los Angeles sunlight. The video, however, would not remain in the shadows. By the next morning, it had gone viral. Shared across social media, the footage sparked outrage. The world saw Keanu Reeves, a man known for his humility, treated with arrogance and disrespect. The contrast was staggering. Keanu's calm and dignified response, especially his line, "Respect doesn't cost a thing," became a rallying cry. Criticism poured in from all corners, aimed squarely at the dealership and Richard. Employees began anonymously sharing stories of Richard's history of condescension and mistreatment, further fueling the backlash. Clients canceled appointments, and the dealership's reputation took a nosedive. Richard was swiftly fired, but the damage was already done. Keanu, however, stayed silent. He wasn't one to seek revenge or revel in conflict. Instead, he used the moment to inspire change. Days later, he returned to the car dealership, not for the car, but to deliver a message. Standing before the humbled staff and a visibly shaken Richard, he said, "True luxury isn't about a price tag. It's about treating people with dignity. I hope you remember that." He left without the car, but soon found what he was looking for at a smaller, family-owned dealership. The owner, Sam, welcomed him warmly, treating him with genuine kindness. Keanu purchased the car and later auctioned it off, raising millions for charities promoting respect and inclusion. Keanu's actions sparked a global movement. Hashtags like "Yurarich," respect is luxury, and "Chariyu," learn from Keanu, trended worldwide, encouraging businesses and individuals to prioritize humanity over superficial judgments. Once again, Keanu Reeves proved that even in the face of disrespect, dignity and kindness can transform the world.